My name is Jill Johnson, and I'm a dancer, choreographer, and stager. I went to the National Ballet School in Toronto. From 9 till 17, graduated from the school. Went right into the company where Eric Bruin was director at the time. And then about a year and a half, 2 years into that, Bill Forsythe came to do second detail in Toronto, and that was it. I found artistic home really with him, and so moved to Frankfurt to join his company in 1991. And I was in the company for 10 years. I went back briefly, the Frankfurt Ballet that is. I went back to Toronto very briefly when James Kadelka took over, which was cool. I needed to return to some of those things for various reasons, but it was great to work with him, and was a soloist there, and then went back to Frankfurt after that again. And I've been staging Bill Forsythe's work for 11 years. And I teach also at NYU, Juilliard, Ailey, the New School, the Joffrey School, and Ohio State University. I mean, it feeds you. It really, I feel like it's fed me for my life. Like, I have enough food now for the rest of my life, and have really since the first time he stepped into the studio. There's an incredible combination that Bill has with, he's unbelievably generous with his gift, and one of those things is to bring things out of other people. So to be around that is really contagious, to have that kind of graciousness, and he's so selfless with it, you know, that he wants you to be a part of it. It's not that you sort of have to get into any kind of club with him. He wants to explore great dancing, and dancers help him to do that, and vice versa. So to be around his brain and his thinking and his spirit going on now 20 years, it's pretty amazing. And I think what has happened is there's a kind of a wave that's happened of that way of thinking, a way of working, and everyone has their different interpretation of it, but to be around also his diversity of ideas, because it's just not that he just did one thing. He's sort of known in America as in the middle or second detail, or even step text is not so known, but those pieces are, 20 years old now, and he's evolved and grown, and so to be around him as he was developing new things was very, very special. I think he changed the way of thinking. I think he opened up the path a little bit, and sometimes there's a misunderstanding. I mean, he would have to sort of speak to that, but I think from my experience of working with him, that there's a reverence for tradition that we all come from, and in a way that tradition is timeless, because like any real true practice, you can fold in new information. So he didn't want to kind of come in and offer a style. He wanted to take what existed and say, what could we do with it? What are the possibilities of that? And then again, what's the ripple effect of that? So I think he opened up, he was involved with John Cranko, who was a creator too. So he was around creativity, and so he spawned that. But it was also Pina Bausch and Merce Cunningham and Ohad Naharin and Yuri Killian, and I mean, so many people I'm missing, but people that sort of paved the way and opened it up. I always feel like it's instead of it being a narrow path, he made it wider, so that it changed the way, and sometimes challenged the way we think about performance. What is it? What's the nature of it? Who said that it has to be lights on and that's performance? The idea that it doesn't always have to be narrative, but that doesn't mean that it's not with the heart, that it doesn't explore emotions. It's just maybe not in that everyone's supposed to have the same idea about it. I think we're in a state of flux. I think that even the way the nomenclature of dance, like the way even what we call, what is contemporary, what is modern, are those things now dated? I think it's a period of questioning, and so it almost, personally, I feel that there's a lot of conflict where there isn't any war any longer. I think there tends to be a lockdown in different fields and different practices, so we stay separate based on what we trained as, instead of sort of rinsing, or rather it's like tradition. Like if those struggles, and there was a conflict before of when modern dance was a response to what was going on, and it needed to be there. It filled an absolute void of what didn't exist before, and again, it broadened things. But I think it would be interesting for all of us to kind of keep a conversation going rather than keeping the same conversation and not talking about stuff. So it's become so loaded and protective, and maybe that's a financial thing, particularly in the States. I think in Europe, the inherent quality of having an opera house and a platform that's not questioned. They have cutbacks too, but it's still viewed as something important to the culture. And we're younger in North America, so we still have to make the case. And I think some of that has to do with us making a better case from the inside out. And at the same time, that's an awareness thing. And I mean, I think shows like So You Think You Can Dance and Dancing with the Stars, I mean, there are many different opinions about it, and so there should be. But I think if that's the point of entry for someone into the culture of understanding, or even writing a check for dance lessons for a son or daughter or whomever, I think it's worth it. That if it gets on someone's radar and it's way over into the pop culture side of things, and the tradition is far over, I think that's part of the conversation. How do we bridge that? So I think it's a support network. I think it's also that maybe we should be open to thinking about dance and what dancing is in a different way, and by that I mean just how we name it, literally. That we don't just say, okay, if I learned this kind of technique growing up, then that's the kind of dancer I am. But you happen to learn that technique, but there's such a hybridization of so many different things, as you know. You collaborate, everyone improvs to make stuff. Dancers are asked now to make, what do you think about that step? That was a question that never happened before, or thought that never happened. So that's an amazing progression. It's not just being told what to do, although that still exists too, but I think the important thing is the internal cultural shift that will help support what it is that we want to do. I think we are. I think the dance community, and I think making the case to people that can financially support us in that. And that I think sometimes there's too much power that people that are holding the purse strings have on artistic vision and choice. And that's a broadening too. In my view, I think that if artists are allowed to fail, that should still be an investment worthwhile, and not just ticket sales and returns. That if that's the culture, then people don't expect it always to be a big hit. Oh, I didn't like it, but what were the qualities that I did? So it becomes more nuanced. It's not love it or hate it, got a bad review, doesn't work. That you see it in terms of a historical context. Oh, that reminded me of Cunningham. Backdrop was like Rauschenberg, but I didn't like the content, because it just becomes much more nuanced. So I think it's up to us to press it a little bit, to keep the conversation going and catch each other without it being so emotional. It's an emotional discussion and impassioned, but I think it's not that we all have to agree. I think we just have to feel comfortable interacting and being able to hold a good conversation. Don't you find that? That sometimes it gets so loaded that you can't really get any further. It's just everyone gets defensive, and then we don't come to a better understanding of each other, because everyone's got a good point to make, I think. Experience in the studio of diverse things. It really comes down, and that's the amazing thing about dancing. You learn it by rote. You can't, it's not a theory. It can't be compared to learning even mathematics. I mean, mathematical theory, I suppose, is different and very similar. Science too. What if this, then fill in the blank. And but I think in an effort to legitimize it, we end up being compared to all these things that are much more empirical. And you have to just get in the studio and practice. It's just practice, and I love that about it, that it hasn't changed. It's still dependent on the human body and then what the brain can bring to it.